Hello super friends and welcome to DC TV Talk. This is the show where we talk all things Supergirl, The Flash, Legends of Tomorrow, Arrow and Black Lightning. And in today's video we're going to be discussing and reviewing the Season 3 finale of Legends of Tomorrow. We have all been waiting for this episode for a really long time. We've been anticipating it to no end and it finally aired last night. I got around to watching it a few hours ago and now I'm going to review it. What an episode this was. So it starts off with exactly where it left off last week, with Malice finally being revealed in his true form, and we see the Legends and their appropriate totem bearers trying to fight Malice with all the different totems, and it proves to be totally ineffective. And this is quite interesting because obviously the whole season's been built up around, oh, we've got to find the totems, we've got to get all the totems because the totems are the key to defeating Malice. You know, if he comes out, then we have to use them all together to defeat Malice. It's the only way, it's the key to defeating Malice. And then we see this big battle take place where all the Legends use the totems in tandem, and it just doesn't work. The totems are completely futile against Malice, and I thought this was a really interesting decision to make. This then leads to Sarah saying to Rip that they need another way, they need something, and this leads to one of the saddest moments from this episode, which pretty much kicks it off, and that is that Rip Hunter steals the time drive out of the Wave Rider and creates a basically time distraction for Malice, and this leads to the death of Rip Hunter. Rip Hunter has got to be one of my favourite characters in the whole of the Arrowverse. I just think he's so cool, and Arthur Darvill just nails it. And, you know, he was the one who started this whole show. You know, without him, this show wouldn't exist, and he is the one who brought this team together. So for him to die finally in Season 3 was just a really sad moment, because I love Rip and he went out in a good way. I feel like it was a bit cheap for the character of Rip to die that way, like as a distraction. I think like perhaps he could have had a more grand death in that sense, but it was still a great moment and it was still a really impactful moment, just especially for the audience, especially for me. To see Rip Hunter die was a really sad moment. It's something I think we were all kind of waiting for. We were kind of waiting for the past couple of seasons, like when's Rip really going to die, or is he going to die? And now he finally does. Now, obviously Legends is a time-traveling show. We can bring back Rip pretty much any time we want. You know, we can bring back any character in Legends, essentially. So, you know, don't be surprised if Rip shows up again at some point. But for now, the Rip Hunter that we've known and we've followed since Season 1 is now dead. And it was a very sad moment indeed. So after the Legends find out about Rip's death and they realise that they can't use the totems against Malice, they decide to retreat to the Wild Wild West. And that is of course a reference to the amazing music video that Katie Lotz released the other day. If you haven't seen it, make sure you go check it out, it is incredible. But they go back to the West. This is the first time we've been to the West this season. We normally get it around the mid-season mark, but we got it towards the end, well in the finale this season. And this is where we meet up with our good friend Jonah Hex, who is of course hanging out in the Wild West too, as he always is. And it was really cool to see him there. He was actually a lot better in this episode than what I thought he was going to be. I thought he was just going to be, you know, kind of what he normally is, which is just this kind of weird side character who's always good, but he's not really utilised that well. But in this episode, he was actually given something to do a lot more. He was actually a lot more involved than I thought he was going to be. And interestingly enough, he has a bit of a relationship or a little bit of a thing going on with Zari. I thought that was really interesting because Zari has always been a bit more of a, you know, ignorant, kind of detached member of the Legends, someone who you wouldn't really think of when it comes to a relationship. But she kind of has this thing going with Jonah Hex, and it is a bit more of a joke, you know, where she's thinking, is it just me or is Jonah Hex really hot? And it is kind of like this thing, and then obviously at the end of the episode he gives her a hat and everything, and they kind of make a joke out of it. But it was interesting to see that, and I really like Jonah Hex in this episode. You know, he's still not the typical Jonah Hex from the comics that we're still waiting to see on Legends, but it was still really cool to have him in this episode. And of course, if this takes place in the Wild West, of course we need to have Jonah Hex there. And he was really good from where he was used and where he was utilised, and I enjoyed his performance a lot. Now this is where we see pirates, Romans, and also Vikings invade the Wild West, and this is like a culmination of 3 different episodes of Legends, because also we had an episode, in episode 1 we went to Aruba with the Romans, and then we had the pirate episode with the Earth Totem, and then we had the Vikings in the mid-season finale. So it's all these different elements coming together, and they've all been resurrected by Malice and transported into the Wild West to fight the Legend. This is basically Malice's army. And this was interesting. It was a bit weird to see some of these characters come back though, like especially, they've actually changed the actor who played Julius Caesar, so when Julius Caesar shows up, that's not the one from episode 1. And I didn't know if I really needed him back. It was quite cool to see Blackbeard back. I did like him, I thought he was quite cool. And then that woman from the Viking episode, I mean, she was fine, I suppose. She was kind of just there to make jokes later on, but I'll get onto that later. But it was interesting to have all these different groups come back and just have them all mesh together as Malice's army. It seemed like a bit of a weird army to have for Malice, but I guess it was all set up, so it was just easier that way. And it was just an army for the Legends to fight, essentially. And it was cool, but I didn't know if I necessarily needed that. Now, there was also a bit of a B storyline going on with Ray and Damian. Now, this is where Ray decides that he finds out a way that he can actually save Nora Dark. So, obviously, Damian wants in on this, and they go off together right before... It's basically the moment right before Nora turns into Malice. And what happens is, Ray and Damian, they go there, and they basically just start hitting Nora for a bit until, before she turns into Malice, and it's not really working. So then Damian actually uses the nanite gun that Ray made earlier in the season to actually defeat Sarah, but he used it on his own daughter, and it almost kills her, but not quite, but it does stop Malice from going into her body, and instead, he actually goes into Damian's body, and this was really interesting. I didn't expect this. I kind of expected it and I kind of didn't, because what it actually leads to is Damian's death. So Damian Dark is now dead, and that was really interesting. I actually thought Damian was going to die this season. It was just kind of a matter of when and how, and this is not how I expected him to go out. I was expecting Malice to kill him, but not like this, like not by him injecting himself into his body and killing him that way. I expected like Malice just to kill him or something, just simply kill him, but not like through this mean. But it was really interesting, and I actually really liked the storyline. I thought it was something that I didn't see coming, and the fact that it actually led to Damian Dark's death, and he actually died a good guy, was actually a really nice character arc for Damian. And I actually, Damian's been amazing this season, and to see him go out in a good fashion like this, I really enjoyed. He had one of the more grander deaths for this episode, and one of the more respectful deaths, especially in comparison to Rip. I really enjoyed just everything with Damian, and I've loved him this season, and I think he went out in the perfect way. Now, we see earlier on in the episode Amaya go into that ancestral plane type thing, that Black Panther-esque ancestral plane, where she actually sees, along with Nate is also there, she and Nate see their original 6 totem bearers actually combine all the lights of the totems together to actually make something. And this is when it clicks to Amaya that the totems can't be used individually, they have to be used together. So it's not that the legends were unworthy of being totem bearers, it's the fact they weren't using them correctly. So this is when it leads into this big final battle, which I'll get into in a second. But this is where Amaya does discover that we need to actually bring all these totems together and combine their powers together to actually make this thing. And this leads to a very entertaining scene where we see the legends try to create something, and they're all just combining it together. And this is actually quite interesting, because seeing as Ray wasn't really with the rest of the legends for a majority of this episode, the water totem actually went to Wally, which I thought was nice. Because I did actually want to, if you remember a video I made a few days ago, I wanted to see Wally be a totem bearer, and we got that, so that he got the water totem, so that was cool. But they're making something, and I love Mick's reaction where he just said, "Are we making a baby?" That was my awful Mick accent, I apologise. But it's just fun to do, so I had to do it. And they make this really horrible Stranger Things looking creature. I don't even know what that was. They don't even explain it. Mick just kills it and that's it. But it was interesting and a bit of an epic fail for the legends, as you would expect from them. But it was an interesting little creation, and I wonder if it'll ever come back to bite them in the arse in some way, because that was a really interesting thing that just happened and then kind of brushed aside. Anyway, after all of these other Vikings and things show up, we see Ava Sharp appear with some blasts from the past, and this was fantastic. This was a great opening. We see Ava come in, and behind her is Kuasa, Helen of Troy, and Mr. Jax Jefferson. And this was fantastic. I'll just go through each of them one by one. So Kuasa, in this new timeline, actually becomes Vixen. So she's actually in the Vixen costume, and she actually has the Vixen powers, and this was really interesting, as a way to bring Kuasa back and bring her back as a good guy and actually bring her back as Vixen. I thought was really nice. That was a really great way to just kind of, although she died a couple episodes ago and she did have a nice ending and she did go out in a nice way, it was really good to see her come back as a hero. I really like to see that. It was just like the final thing we needed to see. Jax came back, and although I'll get onto Jax a bit later, but he didn't actually, do anything with the totem, which I didn't expect. I fully expected him to, take the fire totem, but he didn't. He was pretty much just Jax. And interestingly enough, this is Jax is actually 5 years older than the Jax who left us. This is actually, in his time, 5 years later. He's now married with a child, and I thought that was really nice. It was such a nice moment to give Jax that happy ending, you know, and it's something that he really deserves, especially from the background his character came from. It was really nice just to give him that happy ending, and especially like the last time we saw him, he was really depressed and he was really down after Martin Stein's death, so it was really nice to see that. And also, I can't help but feel that this is like a kind of anagram for his real life situation, where he's now, you know, I'm pretty sure he's married now and he definitely has a child now, so I think that's probably what's going on there. So that is the perfect way as well. So I don't think, although I actually originally thought Jax was going to come back next season, you know, seeing as he now has a child, this is kind of their way of just getting him off the show, and that's his reason for going as well. I have a child now. So Jax probably not returning next season, and definitely won't be using the fire totem as I originally thought. I was wrong. Helen of Troy, though, oh my god, what a standout she was. I'm so surprised that this, you know, weird kind of character that ended in just like a comic book Easter egg actually got a massive payoff. Because if you remember, at the end of episode 6, I believe it was, of this season, we interacted with Helen of Troy, and basically at the end of the episode, Zari sent her to Themyscira, which is of course the island where Wonder Woman comes from, where all the Amazonians are from. And she shows up in this episode as an Amazonian, fighting like an Amazonian. It was incredible, especially in this big final action sequence. She was devastating, and she was an absolute badass, going around, taking out all these guys. And, you know, granted, we're never going to get Wonder Woman on any of these shows, but this is the closest thing we've got, and I think that it was fantastic to actually see it. And not only was she fantastic with sword combat, but then also Jonah Hex was training her earlier on to use, like, Western revolvers, and she was just going around shooting people, headshots, and just, like, doing, you know, that amazing quick-firing six-shooter. It was amazing, and honestly, I think Helen of Troy was maybe my favourite character in this episode. I thought she was fantastic, and I really hope she shows up again, because, like I said, we're never going to get Wonder Woman on any of these shows, but she's kind of the closest thing we have to Wonder Woman, so it'd be awesome just to get her to come back, like, maybe just once a season, just to, like, help out as, like, a big, powerful kind of weapon character, because she was fantastic, and easily one of my favourite characters in the episode. So while we have all that going on, we also have the big battle in the West going on, which is all the legends against Malices Army, and this is just everyone against everyone, like, you know what I mean? We just have all the legends and all their allies going up against all these different enemies, so we get to see all the legends fighting with their totems as normal. We get to see everyone just fighting with their powers, and we get to see Helen of Troy kicking ass. We get to see Jax doing some fighting again, which is awesome. You get to see Wally out there. It was a really awesome, just big final battle where we have all these characters, all of our favourite characters are just going up against this massive army. And even though I wasn't a fan of the massive army idea, and, you know, I wasn't a fan of all the returning characters they had for that army, I really enjoyed the fact that it was just a way to have all the legends just out there, you know, kicking ass, and it was really awesome. I loved seeing it, and just seeing all of them be able to utilize their powers, working together. This is probably the best we've ever seen the legends work together, and it just was awesome. And we had all the allies there as well, like Ava Sharp was really great in it as well. She was awesome. Obviously, we know Ava Sharp's a really good fighter, so she was really effective in that fight. Like I said, Helen of Troy was great also. It was really nice to see Amaya and Kuasa kind of fighting with each other. That was great. It was a really awesome, big final battle, and I didn't think they would be able to top last season's final battle against, like, you know, the 50 reverse flashes, but they actually did it in this episode. I actually think this episode's better than the Season 2 finale, and I didn't think they'd be able to top it, but in my opinion they have, and this final battle helps with that. So after they defeat that massive army, it's now time to take down Malice. And if you remember yesterday in my video, I was talking about how will they take down Malice, and I said, well, it's got to be something to do with Constantine, right? It's got to be Constantine. You know, he's a mythical threat, and he's a mythical character. It makes perfect sense. Well, I couldn't have been more wrong. So the legends have another go at combining their powers together and the totems' powers together to create something, and they want to think of something light and think of something pure, and Nate Haywood decides accidentally to think of Bebo, and this is where everyone begins to think of Bebo, and the legends turn into a huge Bebo, and this was just hilarious. I mean, Bebo has obviously been a recurring joke this season, and it has been really funny for me. I think it's hilarious, and we knew Bebo was in this episode in some regard because the episode is called The Good, the Bad, and the Cuddly, so we kind of knew he was in there somewhere. But to see the Legends turn into a gigantic Bebo and have this one-on-one fight with Malice was absolutely hilarious. I mean, at first he's just walking around the town just like destroying stuff. And he's kind of taking out this army, and he's, you know, saying all the classic Bebo phrases, which are so cute in, you know, when he's a toy, but then when he's this big monster, it's absolutely terrifying. And then he goes and fights Malice and absolutely kicks him to death. Like, it's hilarious. I didn't expect this whatsoever. You know, the final fight, you know, Malice, this huge demon, this thing that's been built up all season, this massive threat, gets taken down by a giant Bebo. It's so stupid. It's so nonsensical, but it's so Legends, and only Legends could ever get away with this, you know. Only Legends could do something like this and have it work, and it's just brilliant. And the fact that all the Legends were actually a part of this, it was kind of like, you know, they all kind of combined to make this, kind of like a Megazord in Power Rangers, that kind of thing. They kind of just turned into this giant Bebo. Absolutely hilarious. And one thing I will say as well, the CGI was actually really good, considering as we had a massive CGI Bebo and a massive CGI Malice fighting each other. It actually holds up really well for the entire sequence, and this was easily the standout scene of the episode, and one that everyone's going to be talking about for many, many weeks to come. So after the massive Bebo versus Malice fight and Malice is defeated, the town goes into a bit of downtime, and this is where we start to relax a little bit, and we see Ray give Nora the Time Stone, which was of course belonging to Damien Dark. Obviously Damien, like I said, is now dead, and it was kind of like a way of just passing on one of his rituals to his daughter. And we'll probably see Nora Dark again, so, you know, we'll probably see her pop up again next season, of course, because the actress who plays her is actually Brandon Routh's wife in real life, so she'll probably show up again next season at some point, so that will probably have some relevance later on. And then we also see Amaya give Kuwasa all of the totems. Now, this is where I was really shocked, actually, because she's given her all the totems, like literally all of them, and obviously I had my theory that Jax was going to take the Fire Totem and become Firestorm again. But that just doesn't happen, and, you know, we just see Amaya give Kuwasa all the totems, and then she goes back with Ava, you know, back into the Time Bureau, along with Helen of Troy and along with Jax, and I just thought, I really didn't see that coming. I really was pretty dead set on Jax becoming Firestorm again by taking that Fire Totem, but I guess he's not, and I was really surprised with that, actually. It just, like I said, it made too much sense for me. But I guess, like I said earlier on in the episode, they do establish that Jax is now married with a child, so he doesn't really feel the need to be a legend anymore, and he doesn't feel the need to travel through time anymore, because again, he wants to just spend time with his family. So, you know, I guess that's their explanation. I can't lie and say I'm disappointed, because, you know, I really want Jax to come back on the show. I love Jax. You know, having him back in this episode just proved to me how much I miss him as a character. I really would have loved him to stick around, but, you know, Fran's drama's got stuff going on in real life, and obviously now so does the character, so it was still great just to have him back for this finale, and I'm sure he'll come back from time to time. You know, it's not like he's dead, so he'll just come back from time to time like he did, you know, here in this episode. He'll do like a one-off type thing, and that'll be great, and that's good enough for me. We then get one of the team members departing, which we knew was happening. We knew one of the Legends was going to leave this season. That was confirmed the other day. And it was, of course, Amaya Jouet. Now, obviously, most of us kind of knew this. We kind of already knew this. The other name I sort of saw floating around was Mick, which I thought was a bit of a weird one. But I always thought it was Amaya. And it is Amaya. She goes back to Zambezi. And, you know, this made a lot of sense. You know, Amaya has been displaced from time for a pretty decent amount of time. So she could only really be on the Wave Rider for not that much longer anyway. And her story really came full circle this season regarding the totems. You know, her whole thing was about the totems, and all the totems come from Zambezi, so now all the totems have to be thrown away. And that was one thing I was interested to see as well, how they get rid of the totems. So they're just giving them to Kuwasa, so they're out of the way now. And Amaya went back to Zambezi, so Amaya's now gone. I assume she'll probably come back at some point. There are rumors that she's going to that Maisie Richardson-Seller will come back to the show next season as a different character, like maybe a different relative to Vixen. Like maybe they can have another Vixen on the show, like another relative of Amaya, and they can just keep the same actress. I don't know, something like that. But Amaya has gone, and, you know, like I said, I thought that was pretty predictable. And I thought there was a potential that perhaps Nate was going to go with her. When it got to that scene, the way it was going, but Nate does stay with the Legends, and he does go back to the Wave Rider. So Amaya's gone, and we have now lost one of the best members of the Legends. So we then cut to the final episode, or the final scene of the episode, where we go back to Aruba, which is of course Mick's favourite holiday destination, and we see all the legends chilling out. We see Mick on a sunbed, and it's really funny, you know, he says, when I said Aruba, I meant just me, not all of you. It's like, you know, a dad babysitting all the kids. It was just really funny. And then we see Gary show up, dressed up, cosplaying as Constantine, which was really odd. But then Constantine himself does actually show up. So obviously we knew Constantine was in this episode. I'm surprised he wasn't in it to the very end. Like, I thought he was actually going to be in the main bulk of it, but he wasn't. He shows up at the very end for the last 5 minutes, and he is simply there to set up Season 4. Now, this is one thing I discussed yesterday was, you know, what's the Season 4 setup going to be? Obviously, I hoped it was going to be the multiverse, but it's not the multiverse. Instead, Constantine shows up with a severed dragon head, and he literally just says to the legends, look, you open this gate, you let Malice out, but you've let other stuff out as well. So this is the setup for Season 4. So what Constantine is saying is, of course, Constantine's going to be a series regular next season, and he's going to be heavily involved next season with the legends. He's actually going to be on the Wave Rider full time, which is awesome. And he's basically saying, look, you know, there's all these other threats you've let out. Now that you let Malice out, you've let all this other stuff out. So this could mean we're getting a lot more mystical stuff, like dragons, and I don't even know. It's really difficult to pinpoint. I mean, that was a dragon's head, so who knows what else is going to be coming next season. It's just going to be absolutely insane and even more crazy than Season 3 has been, if you can imagine such a thing. So, yeah, very interested, and Constantine was absolutely brilliant for like the couple of minutes he was on screen. It was brilliant just to have him there, and we're going to get in plenty more of him next season, which is fantastic. Overall, I thought that The Good, the Bad, and the Cuddly was an absolutely fantastic episode of Legends and an absolutely phenomenal ending to what is, in my opinion, the best DC TV show this season. I'm so sad that it's over. I'm so sad that it's ending. Obviously, now we just have to wait until October, until next season starts. But what a season this has been. It's been truly one of the funniest, most entertaining, most fun shows I have seen in such a long time. And I think that this finale really just, you know, embodies that entirely. And just seeing that really all come to a close, especially with a giant, I mean, nothing is more Legends than a giant Bebo fighting a demonic god monster, and only on Legends will you see something like that. And all the different characters who came back was amazing, just to have those little bits of elements. Rip Hunter's death was really great. I think Damien Dark's death was great. Having Jax come back was really nice. Jonah Hex showing up was awesome. Helen of Troy was an absolutely delightful surprise. Constantine's setup for next season is just mind-boggling beyond belief. And I think that this episode was absolutely incredible and such a fantastic ending to what is, in my opinion, an amazing season of Legends. So what did you guys think about this finale? Tell me in the comment section below what you thought about it. Tell me all your thoughts, your opinions. What did you like, what you didn't? Let's get a conversation going. Let's have a chat about this episode in the comment section down below. It's going to be awesome. And I imagine that this episode is going to spark plenty of discussion among the Arrowverse community over the next few days. So let's get ready for that. Let's just go in the comments. Let's just have a talk about this episode. It's going to be great. So thank you guys for watching this episode of DC TV Talk. If you enjoyed it, please give it a like, it'll help me out a lot, and share this video with anyone and everyone you know who loves DC TV and get them to join the community. And as always guys, please subscribe for all of your latest content on Supergirl, The Flash, Legends of Tomorrow, Arrow and Black Lightning. And with all that said guys, I'd also like to remind you that my full review for Legends of Tomorrow Season 3, obviously this was my review just for the finale, but my review for the whole season will be coming out hopefully some point this week if I can get around to it. It'll be next week at the very, very latest, but I'll try and get it out this week, but hopefully it'll be out this week. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you again in my next one.